Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by the East Baton Rouge Parish School System, inspiring humanity through transformational learning in the classroom and community. Initiatives like Pathways to Bright Futures allow students to graduate high school with an associate degree or an industry-based credential, along with their high school diploma. More information at ebrschools.org. And by Three Roll Estate Craft Rum Distillery, crafting premium rum from their own Louisiana sugarcane. Three Roll is cane to glass.
From Mansur's on the Boulevard, we're out to lunch with Stephanie Regal. It's business, Baton Rouge time.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Regal. Welcome to Out to Lunch. It seems like so many of our systems and institutions are changing these days, challenging our long-held assumptions and making us rethink the way we do just about everything, even simple things like buying dish soap or tennis shoes. With me today to discuss this is Maryclaire Manard, founder of Cluey Consumer, an online platform that enables shoppers to practice conscious consumerism by providing them with easy, accessible data that measures a company's impact on people, politics, and the planet. The platform is free and enables users to create customized profiles that include the values they prioritize and also the brands they currently use. Cluey can then let them know if their brands are aligned with their values, which in theory could cause them to change their buying patterns, which in turn could encourage companies to change their behavior. Since launching the platform in November of 2021, more than 6,000 users have visited the Cluey site. Maryclaire is a native of New Orleans and a graduate of Vanderbilt University who spent much of the past decade working in media and consulting. In 2021, she moved back to her native Louisiana, where she thinks Cluey Consumer can be part of helping grow the entrepreneurial ecosystem and helping make the planet a better place, right? So Maryclaire, thank you so much for joining me today on Out to Lunch.
Thank you for having me. Very happy to be here.
So you have practiced conscious consumerism yourself for a while, but where did this idea come from to create an online platform and to try to, marry a buyer's values and brands with corporate behavior?
Absolutely. I ultimately, when I was starting in my 20s in my career, gaining my own consumer power and being more wise about where I was spending my money and what I was spending it on, I became aware of the outsized impact that corporations often have on our society in a variety of ways, whether it's through their political donations or whether it's through how they hire and treat workers, or even their impacts on the planet. And so as part of that discovery, I wanted to be more discerning with where I was spending my money. The problem, though, was that it was really, really hard to figure out exactly what was true, what was accurate, when a brand would make a sustainability claim, a safety claim, a social claim. I wasn't exactly sure what I could and could not believe. And so that's why I decided to build Cluey. I am a former CNN journalist, a corporate and investment consulting researcher, so I knew that the information existed and was out there, especially with the rise of ideas like ESG for investing. But that information is just completely inaccessible to the everyday person. It's completely disparate and oftentimes unreliable. And so what we wanted to do was create a centralized and reliable solution for the everyday consumer to understand some of the impacts behind the products that they're buying.
So when you make a reference to something like ESG and you say it's hard to get all this information, I'm thinking that a lot of consumers aren't even thinking this way, right? I mean, you were in maybe more progressive or bigger cities, and so this was part of your paradigm. But I think a lot of people probably don't even know what ESG means. So why don't we back up a little bit?
Sure, yeah. Well, so we can back up a bit to talk about ESG, but one thing I'd also like to just note is that sometimes consumers do think in this way. They just haven't connected the dots that this is all related. So an example is when a product is recalled, and you might hear about it in the news. Obviously nobody wants to put a product on their skin that could have a cancer-causing ingredient such as benzene. So when you see benzene in your sunscreen, or you hear that there's benzene in your sunscreen, that gets everybody pretty concerned. So even that in and of itself is conscious consumption. It's not just necessarily about, saving the whales or maybe protecting workers in a far off country. It's also about the impacts that it's having on your own health and safety as a consumer. So I just wanted to mention that because impacts that products can have range from directly at home to far, far away. But to answer the question about what ESG is, ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And it's a new way that investors in particular are looking at evaluating companies and their current performance. So of course, as an investor, you look at a company and you think, is this company fairly valued? Are they, profitable? Do they have good margins? So that's a way to evaluate a company's financial standing. But to understand and evaluate their ESG standing is to understand, is this company at high risk of, maybe building in an area that's prone to natural climate disasters? Is this company currently at risk of potentially having a human rights violation on their books? Is this company not doing enough quality assessment in their product safety, and therefore could have some bad recall news down the road? So all of these things connect to what is ESG.
And is ESG a government designation, or is it something that an NGO came up with, or like you say, an investing standard?
It's currently not. Yeah, it's currently not standardized across the board or regulated in any way, although that is certainly changing.
Good.
What exists today is that there are different ratings agencies that will conduct third-party research as well as first-party research, and will essentially assign ratings, like risk ratings, for example, on those various factors that I mentioned. Now, institutional investors like hedge funds and even private investors are looking and evaluating some of these things alongside, like I said, the financial value of a company. But right now, to date, it's not regulated by the government, it's not standardized, but certainly it's moving in that direction.
And before we dig into a little bit more about your company and your platform, because I think it's fascinating, but just tell me, so I understand, what is driving the conscience of institutional investors? Are you telling me that they're really doing this for the right reason, or does it make financial sense for them? Because I've never known Wall Street to do things necessarily for the right reason.
Right. Yeah, I don't think you think of Wall Street and think of a bleeding heart,
right?
eye banker. No, they are. I think the entire concept stems from this concept called stakeholder capitalism. And the thinking and definition behind stakeholder capitalism, as opposed to shareholder capitalism, is that stakeholder capitalism is all about maximizing value for all stakeholders of a company, not just the shareholders. And by result of doing that, by maximizing value for a company's consumers, for example, or maximizing values for a company's workers or the communities in which the company operates, the company actually creates longer-term financial value and therefore longer-term value to the shareholder as well. So it's a bit of a long-term view versus a short-term view, because certainly shareholders would love for stock prices of companies that they own to rise and value to be created, but that can always come as a short-term trade-off as opposed to a long-term trade-off where you might have to make an investment that may hurt the short-term gains, but in the long run creates long-term value because you're investing in the company's future sustainability, for example.
Interesting. So against that backdrop, you launched this product in the fall of 2021.
Yes.
But you had sort of been working on a prototype that was related to the 2020 elections.
Yes. So this was always something of interest to me, but it never made sense to turn it into a fully fledged business until I had kind of this aha moment, which was, 2020 was a watershed year for a variety of reasons. Yeah. One, of course, was that there was a huge election and probably that resulted in, I believe, the highest voter turnout ever in our history. And what I saw is that a lot of people wanted an outlet for action beyond just voting at the ballot box. They wanted to see everything that they could do to get involved in various ways to make a stand in what they believed in. And so as a result of that, I decided to create a very rudimentary app. And the concept of this app was that it cataloged all the brands that you would find in, let's say, a Walgreens, and you could look between like Angel Soft or Charmin toilet paper, search both on the app, and see where their political contributions were going by their parent company to either political party, and then you could make a decision based on that. So it was the concept of voting with your wallet on these seemingly trivial decisions like toilet paper, where all things considered are equal in terms of cost and function. And what we realized from building that was that it was quite successful. No marketing whatsoever spent on that effort, and we got just under 1,000 downloads. And then we got a ton of feedback where people were like, "I want to see more. I want to understand more than just political impacts. I want to understand, are their products cruelty free? Are they is this a veteran-owned business? Is this a business that's, safe for acting in line with, a good steward for the environment? A variety of things that we recognize that, consumers' unique value sets and humans' values are so complicated and unique. You probably have a set of personal values that look very different than mine, and same with everybody else in the room. And so we wanted to create a product where anybody in the world who cared about a variety of issues could come search for any brand that they would buy and be able to make a decision that could make a bigger impact with their everyday purchase.
That's a tremendous amount of data and research. Where did you get the information? Who compiled all this, aggregated it?
Yep, that's where the former journalist and corporate researcher in me came out. So a lot of it was
that's a
just
lot
elbow grease. A lot of elbow grease. I like to say that I'm a rabbit hole chaser, so I can get into the nitty gritty of researching something till I'm blue in the face about learning about it. And so it was a natural fit for me in terms of the skill set. But it hasn't just been me. I've been able to bring on some amazing rock stars onto the team as well. And we've scaled our research efforts to be both manual research as well as some automated research efforts where we're scraping data across the web from multiple sources.
That already exists.
Exactly.
And is already
exactly. So to be clear, we're not, I'm not going over to Procter & Gamble's factories and like measuring the carbon emissions out of their smokestacks. We are accessing data that already exists. And so I like to say that we are experts in finding expertise. Yeah. And the great thing about that is that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We know that there are smarter people out there who measure very specific things, and we bring those data sources in. So examples of our data source could include things like OSHA fines, EPA fines, impact assessment tools, some of the ESG ratings providers I mentioned, and much, much more.
So interesting. How many brands or companies have you all researched? Do you have information on in your database?
So we've researched over 6,000 brands, which is representative of 100,000 product SKUs. So, think about something.
I'm so impressed. I love this. Okay.
Well, think about something like, Burt's Bees, for example. Burt's Bees has chapstick. They now have eyeshadow. They have probably 20 different products just within that one brand's portfolio. So we have 6,000 brands that's representative of all those products. Not every single one of those brands has a people and planet impact score, but they have some information, partial information. So we always have the parent company listed. We'll always have political data listed because that's federally regulated, publicly available data. And then we're able to verify some other things. So if a brand I mentioned earlier is a veteran-owned brand or a woman-owned brand, we're starting to onboard more and more smaller brands, and we're able to get that access to that information directly from the brands, which is helpful.
And how many people do you have working with you on this?
So right now we have 3 full-time and about 6 part-time and contractor positions currently active with Cluey, and we're definitely looking to expand our team. We were very fortunate to be a part of the Idea Village X Accelerator program, and we were part of a pitch competition for New Orleans Entrepreneurship Week where we were able to secure $175,000. Nice. So that has been very helpful to giving us some runway and allowing us to continue to build.
You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Stephanie Riegel. I'm talking to Maryclaire Manard of Cluey Consumer. Maryclaire, so then, if I'm Procter & Gamble and maybe sales fall off a bit here or there, but how do you hope to communicate to the corporations, the brands, that perhaps they need to change their behavior, and this is why maybe, that people are using your app and seeing that their scores are low, and so they're not going to buy a P&G product anymore. But how does P&G feel that tension?
Sure.
And then hopefully change its behavior.
Totally. And I just want to qualify for the audience. I don't have the P&G score off the top of my head, but you could check it out at clueyconsumer.com. So I don't want to say that they have a bad score if they don't. They might actually have a average or decent score. But yeah, I think a couple of things. First is that oftentimes when, sometimes I talk to people about this idea, they're like, yeah, but will my purchases really make a difference? It absolutely will. And I'll give you a stat to prove that. If the metro area of Tampa, Florida, everyone in that metro area is about 3 million people, and maybe it's not just those 3 million people, maybe it's 3 million people scattered across the country, but if just 3 million people swapped a toilet paper brand, shampoo brand, laundry detergent brand, and coffee brand in their home for a year, that amount of money diverted in terms of value would equal 6% of global annual revenue for the largest consumer packaged goods company in the world.
Wow.
So it just shows how such a little shift in behavior actually has a huge difference. Think about how much money you probably spend on toilet paper in a given year, or how much money you spend on dish detergent, what have you, and then just compound that over not even that many people, when you think about the whole wide world we live in. So it definitely does make a difference. And I think that companies are very aware of that already, and that's why they're doing things like buying and merging or acquiring brands that have a more purpose-driven mission, or might be able to appeal to a more conscious consumer set of customers. So I'm definitely a big believer that this is already a trend, and we're just helping to accelerate it.
Mm-hmm. I just didn't know if there was a mechanism for letting the company know,
Oh,
and
good
maybe
question.
I'm naive. I mean, they may know, but they may not. Especially if it's a small drop.
No, it's a great question. Right now, the way that we can track some of that information is users and consumers on the app can like or dislike brands. They can add or remove brands from their household, and so we can track all of that data and package it up to eventually license it as market research insights dashboards to brands. We're not yet there in terms of having those products available for brands to license, but that's the ultimate end goal. Right now, our focus is growing our audience and growing our user base.
Sure. And you said, as I mentioned, you had told me in the introduction that y'all have had about 6,000 viewers on your page.
Yes, just under 6,000 in our total audience. And this is across all of our assets, so our social media, our weekly emails, and of course the web app, and we also have a Chrome extension. So if you're people who love the idea of taking Cluey with them on the go as they're surfing the web, as they're shopping online, the Chrome extension works in a way where it can pop up and show you the impacts of the brands that you're currently shopping at.
So I would imagine that your average user is a woman, maybe under 40 or maybe under 50.
Yep,
is
spot
that
on.
the average profile?
Spot on. I mean, I would say I am my target user in a lot of ways. That's why I started Cluey. I said at the end of the day, I want to build a solution that I at least know I would use, and that's exactly what it's become. So obviously, as a result of that, a lot of people who fit in my demographic are some of our higher users. Obviously, I leverage my organic network to start to grow spread the word. But what we found is that if you're not in that demographic, that doesn't mean that Cluey is not for you. There's lots and lots of users who we've spoken to who are, we spoke to one user who considers herself even older than the oldest baby boomer, and she loves to use Cluey. And we have plenty users who identify as a male all over the country. So there's a lot of difference in the variety of the users that we have, but certainly a large majority are that young professional millennial woman who just wants to be a little bit more careful with what they're buying.
Why do you think women? Maybe off subject question, but why are
Great
women
question.
more conscious consumers?
Great question. I think about this a lot, actually. I think that there's a couple things. First is, traditionally, I think women in households are usually the primary consumer decision maker. I know I certainly am in my household with my husband. He leaves that to me, and I like it. I like being able to really get in the nitty gritty. There's a lot of statistics too on gender differences in America. Women are actually in many ways more academically inclined, so the ability to get a little bit deeper into some research seems to make sense in some regards. And then the conscientious person, or maybe the piece and the values-oriented piece, not to say that men are not values-oriented or that they're not academically oriented or anything like that, but women, certainly have some sort of disenfranchisement in their experiences, whether it's been professionally or otherwise. And I think as a result of that, when you're a step closer to understanding some level of disenfranchisement, you're more likely to empathize with an issue or a value that you could wrap your head around. So the concept of workers not being paid a livable wage might be something that a new mom who's having to take care of her 2 kids, 2 under 2, and work a full-time job
can really relate to. Hello.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think there's a lot of relatability.
Yeah, that's a great point. You mentioned users all around the country. I mean, are they spread out geographically diverse, or are you mostly concentrated in South Louisiana users just because that's where you are?
Geographic. I mean, we certainly have a great contingent of South Louisiana users. I think it would probably be that would probably surprise people, conscious, and not to say that South Louisianians can't be conscious consumers. I'm a South Louisianian, and many of our users are, but it would probably surprise people that this sort of business concept would be headquartered here, but we've got a great contingency here, and I think it's a great opportunity for Louisiana to show its chops in that regard. So we certainly have a contingency here, but yes, all over the country, certainly concentrated in more metropolitan regions, but there's plenty of people from rural areas as well. So I like to say that, I never put our users in a box. And it's really, really interesting, the data that we've gathered on them, too.
Tell me, share.
Yeah. So of our users who share, who maybe identify more with the right versus identifying with the left, there's quite a bit of common ground, actually, in terms of other issues they care about. One of the more common ground issues is being against cruelty to animals. So buying cruelty-free products seems to be a huge common ground issue amongst Republican and Democratic consumers.
Wow, good to know.
So that's a really interesting one. And there's a lot of care for environmental impact as well. And so I think sometimes people make assumptions based on a political party or political ideology that you have to believe a certain set of values, but there's quite a few folks on either side of the aisle who share common ground on trying to reduce negative environmental impacts as well. So.
And it's great to hear that you have hard data on that, because we know that anecdotally, but it's a good reminder.
Totally.
So what is the plan for monetizing this platform? How do you make money off of it?
Yeah, great question. We're still very much in the early days of our executing on our business model, but there's a few ways that we monetize. The first is through affiliate sales, a commission on affiliate sales. So if we recommend a product to you and you end up purchasing based on your values and you end up purchasing that product, that link, when you click on the link and then you check out of your shopping cart, that gets tracked and we get a commission on that sale. So that's the first way we make money. And the second way we make money is through monetizing the user data. Now, this would be completely anonymized and aggregated data, but this would allow us to do things like create programmatic advertising platforms. So if you think about Facebook, a Facebook experience, you don't go to Facebook to shop or get really creepy targeted ads, but that ends up being what happens.
Yeah.
With Cluey, we really want to turn that model on its head. And if you want to support women-owned businesses and you want to buy cruelty-free products, we can funnel advertising experiences to you while you're on our platform and off our platform surfing the web that match brands that actually share those values. So it's a really cool way of leveraging data, user data in a positive way that I think the users and consumers will be much happier with than is Siri or Alexa listening to me constantly.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, and then you mentioned that y'all had won the pitch night competition. Where else have y'all gotten financing?
Yes, so we've been able to raise as well from both institutional and angel investors. I want to give another big shout out to the South Louisiana region. The majority of the folks on our cap table are actually based here.
Fantastic.
So that's been awesome, and I think that shows that there's a lot of growth potential for early stage startup companies to come and build here. So we have institutional investors here as well as elsewhere in the country, and same with some angel investors too.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I'm not surprised, because I would think that, your concept here is sort of the right idea at the right time.
Thank you. We would like to think so.
Maryclaire Manard, you are such an inspiration and a reminder of how much intellectual and entrepreneurial capital and homegrown talent we have right here in our midst in South Louisiana. So thank you all for your hard work and for sharing your insight and stories with me today on Out to Lunch.
Thank you for having me. It's always a great time.
My guest today on Out to Lunch has been Maryclaire Manard of Cluey Consumer. We had to edit this show to fit into our time slot here on WRKF. You can hear our unedited conversation and learn more about Cluey Consumer by going to our Out to Lunch Baton Rouge podcast. You can find and subscribe to the Out to Lunch Baton Rouge podcast anywhere you get podcasts and on our website, it's batonrouge.la. If you want to know what we all look like, you can find photos from this show on it's batonrouge.la and on our Out to Lunch Baton Rouge social media. Photos are taken by Eric Otts. You can find more of Eric's photos on Instagram at @acro, that's ACREAUX. Out to Lunch is a production of INO Broadcasting for it's batonrouge.la and WRKF 89.3 FM. The producer of our show is Grant Morris. Our technical producer is Eric Merle. Today's show was engineered by J.T. O'Neill. Our associate producer is Peter Raschuti, and our Baton Rouge business consultants are Charlie D'Agostino and Ann Edelman. I'm Stephanie Riegel. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to meeting you around the table at Mansour's again next week for more business Baton Rouge style on Out to Lunch.
Out to Lunch Baton Rouge is recorded live over lunch at Mansour's on the Boulevard in Baton Rouge. Mansour's is open for lunch daily 11 to 2, for dinner nightly, and for brunch on Saturdays and Sundays. Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by the East Baton Rouge Parish School System, inspiring humanity through transformational learning in the classroom and community. Initiatives like Pathways to Bright Futures allow students to graduate high school with an associate degree or an industry-based credential, along with their high school diploma. More information at ebrschools.org. And by Three Roll Estate Craft Rum Distillery, crafting premium rum from their own Louisiana sugarcane. Three Roll is cane to glass. Mitchell Foreman wrote and performs all the music on Out to Lunch. You can hear Mitchell's music anywhere great jazz is sold or streamed, and at mitchellforeman.com. If you'd like to be part of Out to Lunch, there's one sponsor slot open for 2023. To learn how your business or organization can become an Out to Lunch program partner, email info@inobroadcasting.com.